you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Today we're in for a treat. Myself and three other experienced correctional officers, technically. We are going to be talking about what you need to absorb on the first few days on the job. Now, you guys probably couldn't see this, but when I said experienced correctional officers, Russ was looking around to see where they are. So we'll find them eventually. But for the meantime, you have us. It's going to be a great dialogue. It was recommended because I have a friend of mine who I've been in contact with who's trying to write a book. And we were talking about, you know, some of the big milestones in his profession. And definitely it's going to be the first few days. And we wanted to discuss, like, you know what, if you were to give tips to other rookies, what would the tips be centered around? And he said, well, things you need to know on that first day, things you need to absorb. So I thought we could bring in our experts and we could kind of have a dialogue and see where it goes. Now, guys, these are people with experience, so I definitely would listen. Russ, you mind introducing yourself to the audience and also what's going on with Keepers of Chaos? I'm mute, Russ.
I am unmuted. All right. My name is Russ Hamilton. I run a Facebook site called Keepers of Chaos. We're coming up on 5,000 members here pretty quick. And Keepers of Chaos is dedicated to the men and women who are professionals inside the business of corrections. And we really focus on, the real meat of the matter, which is, training, content, history, and everything else that helps all of those men and women do their jobs better, whether they're officers, lieutenants, sergeants, nurses, teachers, handyman, whatever it is. If you're in the corrections field, you should feel right at home there, and we're going to get you some kind of training some way that's going to help you stay safer and make your facility a better, more safe place to work.
Well said, Russ. And guys, if you guys get a chance and you're on Facebook, please check out Keepers of Chaos. He has a whole mentorship program there, which I'm still just fascinated by. I think that's a great idea. Now, Jim, don't forget to unmute. But we also have Jim Carpenter. Jim, you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I'm Jim Carpenter. I am a jail administrator, a sergeant at a small Nebraska jail. I've been in law enforcement and corrections for about 14 years now in various ways. I've been, right now I'm a jail administrator. I've been a corrections industries shop operator. I've done nationwide extraditions and reserve deputy. So I've been on pretty much every end of law enforcement and corrections that you can go with.
Well, I'll tell you something, Jim. You have a wide array of experience, so I can't wait to maybe check out this course that you're going to provide for our channel. But again, guys, we're going to start providing courses for the channel. It's going to be free, but we're going to do it in private Zoom rooms, and they will not be recorded. You just have to verify that you work in corrections. The courses will be seen by all of us, and we'll find a way to craft it, and then we're going to go ahead and have it presented to you guys upon request. So if you guys think of a course, let us know, and we could maybe either develop it ourselves, or if you guys want to get involved, let us know. And again, we'll do the course in a very private manner, but you have to show somehow, because you have to be able to verify that you work in the system. Joe Pomponio. Now, don't forget, Joe, you got to unmute. But Joe's been on the show once before. Hey, Joe, mind introducing yourself again to our audience?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name is Joe Pomponio. I've been in the corrections field for almost 30 years, 29 and a half years. I've been a mid-level supervisor for 22 of them. prior military policeman, and also a licensed police officer, with a lot of training experience on and off the field, and look forward to all the trainings that we can start providing for people. I think it's going to be a real good thing.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Welcome to the Tier Talk family, guys. So, guys, we're going to go to our sponsor. We come back. We're going to talk about things you need to absorb on that first day or first few days working in the profession. And, guys, if you're new to this profession, listen to what we have to offer, because none of us got this going in. None of us. So to have experienced officers take time, to sit there and discuss it with you, it's just an honor. It's quite humbling. So now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tier Talk, brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. The bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to our sponsor, and we come back. What you need to know or figure out first few days you start working prisons and jails. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Guys, inmate manipulation is a course that is highly needed. It's the process that's so slow moving and subtle that you don't realize it's happening. When inmates choose to manipulate, they manipulate our need to react. Situational awareness and insight is going to save your career. It's going to save you from doing foolish things. Listen to your gut. So the more insight we have, the more we can recognize what isn't so overt, and we can correct our behavior before we fall into a trap that we can't get out of. If you allow an inmate to pull you out of your prescribed role, you are opening up a door for a host of problems. Inmate manipulation, the psychology behind inmate manipulation. Available now. Link in description. All right. And we are back. Now, me and Russ started to touch on this topic before. Problems with Facebook and then sort of some problems with Zoom. But Russ, let's just go in right off the bat, because I'm also, while you bring in the dialogue, I actually am going to go to my Facebook page, because I also asked the question to our community, and they have some responses that were coming in that I want to kind of read off. But I know that you opened up the Facebook chat with some really good dialogue. So do you mind going first?
Absolutely, Anthony. It's really important that, these new people, when they come in, for their first day, their first week, whatever, that they try and get a feel for what it's going to be like to be communicating with inmates. And the reason that we bring that up is because that's critical. That's, almost everything that we do hinges on being able to develop that skill set, to be able to, talk to the inmates, and to be able to, have them do what you need them to do, and also to be able to understand what they're saying to you that's going to allow you to take the actions that you're going to need. And, so many times it's such a critical thing that, someone new coming in, they don't even know for sure if this person that they're working with that first day is good at doing this, or if they've just found a way to just kind of skate by and let the inmates run things. And so it's really important that they start, assessing and, trying to break that apart in a critical manner and see who's the best communicator around them to these inmates. Most of the time, they're just absorbing it and they assume that that person's doing it the right way. They may be, or they may not be, but we have to, try and have classes like this, or videos like this that can kind of, help them bridge that gap so that they become effective communicators, so that they can make their little area of corrections a little bit safer, a little bit more secure.
Right. Now, O'Rourke Lepezia Scott, excuse me for the name, guys, he mentioned something I want to feed into. He goes, I got great advice when I started. Work with as many people as you can. Try and take what you like about each one of them. Use that information to help build yourself into your own CO. and this person had 31 plus years. Hey, real quick, I do want to discuss interactions, so I'll go first, and I'll fold over to Jim, Joe, and then if Russ wants to finish off this part. Observe the interaction staff has with the inmates. Now, mind you guys, you're still coming in, so, you haven't really developed a foundation. Basically, you don't really know who you're going to be yet. Again, that's something that's going to develop through time. But with that said, I'm sure you're going to find some staff that you relate with because of their work ethic or because they seem to be professional. How I realized that from the get-go is how I felt when I was around them. I may not know enough about the profession at that point, but I do know when someone makes me feel uncomfortable, and I do know when someone makes me feel comfortable. And what I did was I took note of both. Don't get me wrong, because you can learn from the good just as much as you can learn from the bad. But the point is I really try to model myself around the officers who I just felt were professional in their ways, really knew how to control their interactions with the inmate population. Again, you definitely want to make sure you pay attention to that. But also we were like-minded. We still believe, or especially me coming in, that there's value in this job. So I'm going to connect to people that have that same value that I feel about this job, about this career. And one of the things I also took note of is how they give those directives out. I'm looking for confidence. I'm looking for consistency. And I am looking for, is that person being fair in what they're doing? Are they being consistent, firm, and again, to me, that mattered the most because, again, I've seen some officers that even after 10, 15 years, they're still afraid to give a directive. You could tell it, especially people like me who, watch people give their delivery. It's like, you know what, man, you have no confidence in the directives that you're given. And the reason why is because you don't believe in the directives that you're given. So I'm looking for people that step up. And, when they give a directive, they're firm in that directive, but they're also fair. So again, with that interaction, I'm looking for people that have control, but on the adverse, for people that are unprofessional or people that are just really not up to par with the value that I feel should be put into this profession, I'm going to also learn what not to do. But Jim, on that first day, how important is it to try to understand that dynamic, that interaction between staff and the inmate population? And don't forget to unmute.
Yeah. All right, Anthony. You've got to really watch how your field training officer or whoever you're shadowing that first day interacts with inmates, but also watch how they interact with other staff, because you want to watch and make sure that people talk to staff, because if you don't pass on information within your shift and into the next shift, things can get really wonky really quick. But don't pay attention to just how your training officer, the guy you're shadowing, responds to everybody too. Pay real attention to how everybody responds. Watch how everybody responds. If one inmate is going around to everybody, watch how everybody responds to that one inmate, and see how things are going. See if they all respond the same way, or if they don't, find out why they didn't. Because maybe the ones that responded a certain way were line officers, and they didn't have the authority to make the decision that the sergeant did or that the lieutenant did, and that's how it had to go up the ladder to get to where it did, if it actually went that way. So, but make sure you watch how everybody reacts, because not everybody is going to react the same way. And in all reality, the guy you're shadowing, the field training officer, maybe he's not the best person to be watching, because maybe he's not going to react or talk in just the right way, even though he's the training officer. So you might find somebody else that reacts or talks better to the inmates that might be a better staff for you to watch on how you need to react with the inmates.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. You hit a couple of areas here real quick that I want to just briefly go over. First off, for those that are in a position of being an FTO, a field training officer, take it seriously. You're creating a foundation for the new boots. And if you're in charge of putting field training officers in those positions, put ones that want to be there. You know, I know you may have some people that are qualified, but ask them, do you want this position? This is what I mean by, do you want this position? Do you want to make sure that you're teaching the rookies the right thing and teach them about the value and care for the job? Listen, you have over 25 years in, and you may not be the happiest person in this profession, but at the end of the day, is that what's going to leak out to our new people coming in? Because I'm not going to want that. You know, I want people that come in with that love, and then hopefully, you know, it grows. And that's part of what we got to do. But you also mentioned something I think Joe could also touch on too, where you also talked about observing the communication, because communication brings consistency 100%, right? So you outlined that perfectly well, and I appreciate that, Jim. But you also talked about chain of command. Now, a lot of people that may come into this profession may not be used to that paramilitary structure, may not be used to that chain of command and the importance of that chain of command. You touched on something that was so important. See why some people are saying no and why some people are able to say yes at that higher position, because you got to know where your boundaries are. So Joe, just in short, to complement what Jim said, when it comes to not just interaction with the inmates, but Joe touched into interaction with the peers, I like that communication and that chain of command, right? Would you agree that's something that should be observed?
Oh, definitely. You know, chain of command's important, you know, especially for officers on their first day that, you know, like you said, that they don't have, their family may not have been a military background or law enforcement or anything, so they don't know about that structure support. I've always told my officers as they came in, you know, the first thing that you want to be is confident in your abilities, know your limits, be confident in yourself, be firm, fair, and consistent, and always pay attention to your surroundings. Because, you know, on your first day, second day, maybe even your third day, you're put with more than one person. You know, your FTO, most of the time the FTO brings the guys in, does their initial paperwork, and disperses them out to other officers. You know, and as you know, as a new person driving up, I know when I went down to the cell blocks, you know, I'd go to one cell block and it's just total chaos. Inmates are running the runs, going from cell to cell, coming out half dressed, whatever the case may be. And 2 hours later, I go over to another cell block and it's totally structured. You can't hear a sound. You know, everybody's dressed appropriately, doing what they're supposed to be doing. So, you know, it's always important to take in the total picture, you know, because that kind of tells you what kind of officers you're with and who you should try to not so much emulate, but take the positives from and use them for your own personal adaptation.
Yeah, you know what, Joe? Obviously 100% in agreement. You know, when you're at the beginning coming into this profession, you're setting yourself a foundation. Part of it is going to be the forced interactions you have with people along the way, whether it's the inmates or staff, but part of it is also going to be the ones you choose to interact with. So when you're looking to choose to grow, you know, look to find people that are like-minded, but also want to give you the time of day. You know, that's the key. And guys, if you're a senior officer, give these rookies the time of day, because this is their chance for them to embrace the bond that keeps people in the profession. Guys, it's not the profession that keeps people in the profession. It's the bond. It's what we have behind the wall that motivates us to stay. So please, if you have rookies that are looking, you know, for that connection, help them, you know, because at the end of the day, they could probably be getting another job somewhere else. But right now they're here, appreciate them, welcome them, so they're not looking for another job. And, you know, they remain in this profession, because even myself, I've been given offers. But what kept me in this profession was the people. I mean, you ever get to a point where you may even have a better offer, but you don't want to abandon your family? That's not about the profession, guys. That's about the bond that was created that only can happen, you know, in this tight environment with the pressures that we face every day. I mean, it's crazy, but we really are the diamond in the rough. Now, Russ, a lot of people here, when I gave the question I asked was, for a rookie, what are some of the things they must absorb within their first few days working in corrections? Over 80-something comments came back, but I see that no is a big thing. So if I was a rookie and I'm watching, let's say, staff give out those no's, what am I looking for? How am I looking to see if those no's are confident no's, that the person giving those directives believe in the directives that they're providing?
Yeah, the reason that this comes up time and time again about saying no is because, people tending to be human and whatnot tend to want to try and be helpful. And the way that you're generally helpful, especially to strangers who you don't know yet, who are inmates, who you don't understand the level of manipulation that they're going to be involved in yet, is by saying yes, right? Yes, you want to be helpful. Yes, you want to give them this. Yes, you want to let them, go over to medical without an escort or whatever it is, all joints are different and stuff. So there's a million different things that you may not know, even if you have a little bit of experience. But the reason that we tell the new guys that we want to hear no from them is because no is harder, right? No is harder for them to say, and it's harder for the inmates to exploit. And so that's what we want to see initially. Now, as you become more familiar with policy, as you become more familiar with procedure, as you become more familiar with what all of the bad things that can happen with regard to a yes are, then you're in a position where you can start being able to say yes, and you can justify it based on policy, based on procedure, based on safety at the moment. But initially, we want to see you take that stand, and we don't want to see you waver from it. We want to see you, set your feet and say no, and mean it authoritatively. Because if you're waffling, the inmates are going to sense that, and they are going to eat you alive.
You know what, Russ, you covered a lot of good points there. Definitely, especially touching on policy and procedure. Joe also made a chat that, and I agree with this, it's easier to say the no because you could always change a no to a yes. We've heard that before. And it's great to be reminded of that, because another thing is this, when you're new, you don't really have discretion. You haven't really got the experience. So most of the time you're going to have to say no, know where your resources are. And then if the no gets confirmed, that's great. If the no has to be changed, that's fine. You could still craft it in a way that still maintains your sense of authority. We all make mistakes, but the inmate doesn't have to know that. You just go back and say, hey, listen, I got to thinking about it, and I decided that we can go ahead and do this. But I want to stress the importance of policy and procedure real quick, because that's definitely something you want to absorb. Each facility is going to run different. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're at the academy first, some don't have the academy first, but if you are, you're going to get a foundation in which that you can apply what you're going to learn at the facility. So the academy should give you a foundation, and then you go ahead and you apply that. Now, with that said, you're still coming into a facility sort of as a blank slate. You have some foundation, but I'll tell you something. Some stuff at the facility may not even operate near to what the academy is telling you. So there is some maneuvering, if you will. But when it comes to policy and procedure, this is going to be your foundation at that facility. Once you get an understanding of policy and procedure, it's going to help you put in the pieces that you're going to need eventually to develop some level of discretion, because you have to kind of know the big picture before you try to maneuver, because you got to know where I got to go. If I don't have direction, then I can't maneuver, because I'm going to get lost. So I will tell you one thing. If you guys know policy and procedure, you can scramble, but at least you know where you got to be. Eventually, you'll find where you got to be. And corrections will have you scrambling all day, but we're never, ever lost, because we know what the end game is. Hey, Jim, when it comes to policy and procedure, any tips on how to absorb that?
About the easiest thing you can do is, when you go to the academy, you're going to do your policy and procedures a lot. If you really want to get into it, pick one policy a day or one policy every couple of days. Focus on that one policy. But the other thing is, a lot of places, you have to understand, have what they call post orders. And those are for the immediate part are as important or even more important than department policy and procedures, because your post orders are going to tell you exactly what you have to do at that post. If you're working, say, sergeant in the shops, there are specific orders for what you have to do in the shops or in visitation. There are specific post orders for doing that. Now they'll mesh with your policies and procedures, but make sure you get into your post orders as hard as you do your policies and procedures. Like I said, if you do them, do your policy and procedures, like take one once a day and read through it and learn it. And if you have questions, ask questions, but learn your policy and procedures.
Yeah, I love that, Jim. And I like the fact, like usually what I did when I first got on the job and I was learning policy and procedures, the officer that was training me would literally have me read that first and then said, okay, you got a decent understanding. Now we'll see how it plays out. And I will tell you sometimes, guys, obviously always read the policy and procedures. Can't tell you not to do that. Always do that. But don't forget, guys, you're going to get the routine of the facility eventually. That's going to kind of come passively. Trust me. I mean, when you first get into this profession, there's so many moving parts and you're going to be like, oh my God, I'm never going to learn this, but you do. You just do. It just comes to you passively. So some stuff you're going to have to make an effort to learn, and some stuff are just going to come your way. With policy and procedure, I think it's a mixture of both. I think that you're going to have to make the effort to learn because you're going to need to know where to look. But I also feel that some of it you're going to catch passively just by daily routine. But again, it's one of those things that's kind of like a mixture of both the effort and then what you're going to learn passively. But together, guys, I promise you, you may feel lost those first couple of days, but you're going to start finding that ground. And just again, I don't know if Joe, you want to touch on any tips for policy and procedure, how to kind of pick it up quick?
Yeah, just to reiterate what he said, it's the same thing with our facilities here. Each duty post has a specific post order. Another good tool is, I don't know, how other states operate. With our state, each facility has what they call a building schedule that you can refer to. So, when a convict's supposed to be getting ready to go to work, when a convict's supposed to be getting ready to go to vocational or some sort of trade, when they're supposed to be going to pill line, sick call, whatever the case may be. It's a chronological order that tells you what the day's activities are supposed to be. And I normally print a copy of that along with the post orders for each duty post to give to the officers, kind of give them a leg up so they don't feel like they're behind the eight ball. Because, the academies teach you the basics: law library, use of force, Prison Rape Elimination Act, ACA standards, pat searches, chow hall running, that kind of stuff. But when you get in there, like you said, there's a lot of moving parts. And, some of those officers get in there and get on a duty post and get overwhelmed. They're like, oh, crap, nobody told me about this. It's because each facility operates different. My suggestion is yes, definitely read post orders for all the duty posts, because that's going to tell you what you're supposed to be doing at that specific duty post. Read the building schedule so okay, here in 15 minutes, we're supposed to be getting these guys ready for rec, or we're supposed to be getting these guys ready for shower. At the same time, you've got to have a little bit of initiative to kind of jump in there and try to stay ahead of the game yourself. Don't rely on just the FTO and the other officers to keep you afloat. Take that initiative, keep yourself ahead of the game. And if you have coworkers and an FTO that's worth a damn, they'll help you along the way.
Yeah, I love that, Joe. I love how everybody right now is on the same page. There's stuff you're going to have, but also I like that. Take the initiative. Hey, Russ, James Austin, in one of the comments he mentioned, and I thought this was pretty unique, and I would love to get your thoughts on this. Because now, guys, mind you, Tier Talk, we don't just do 101 here. We're not afraid to touch on the topics that could be controversial, because at the end of the day, someone has to discuss it, right? I mean, that's what we're here for. But it doesn't matter if we agree or not. These are people with experience, and we have to have respect for that perspective, because there are times when me and Russ may not agree, or Russ and Jim. It doesn't matter. You got 28, 30 years in the profession. I may not agree, but damn it, I respect what you're saying, though. I just got to be a little bit more crafty with how I maneuver. But hey, Russ, as he was talking about supervisors, James Austin said, even as a new boot, learn what supervisors you can trust and which ones to watch out for. What does he mean?
Wow. Well, that's a huge subject. Okay. And the thing is, officers and supervisors, management, administration, everyone's human, right? And across that human spectrum, there's going to be all kinds of people. There's going to be people out there that are striving hard to do their job and to help make other people better. And there's people out there that are loose cannons that really aren't looking out for anyone but themselves, and they have no clue as to what they're actually doing in corrections, and they have some wrong-headed ideas that actually put people in jeopardy. And so we have the whole gamut out there. And so what we have to look for is we have to look for those supervisors that are going to train us up in the way that we should go, right? And we have to be sharp and making sure that that supervisor really does know his stuff. We want that supervisor to be, leading us and, directing us if we're doing operations that day. Maybe we're doing a mass search. Maybe we're going to do a dorm raid. Maybe we're going to do a raid on a cell. Maybe we're going to do an extraction. Whatever these operations that we're doing out that fall anything, outside the norm of our regular operations, we want to take that opportunity to assess the worth of that particular supervisor. The day-to-day housekeeping stuff, as far as, feeding meals and doing count, you know what? I would say for the most part, anybody that's been around for just a little bit of time can get that down. But it's those other things, those, high critical incidents, those operations that we carry out where we want to see the true worth of that supervisor. And then we want to do what we can to emulate him. But more than that, we want to do what we can to make him even more successful than he already is, because that's a real important part of corrections, is being able to bolster people up that are even above us. And, that has a trickle down effect, and that allows us all to function better. That allows us all to learn the profession in a more profound way. And that, impacts that bottom line, which I say every time I'm on one of these videos: safety and security. Be that impact player. Help that supervisor be an even bigger impact player.
What's great? It's great that we're having this dialogue, because I'm not lying to you guys. Each time you guys end, it goes right into it just flows right into the comment that's coming out. James Darmstadt says, always make sure all locks are locked. If you're in a lockup unit, all inmates are cuffed before opening any cell door, and all your equipment is accounted for before you go home. So I'm assuming what James is trying to say, and Jim, compliment or just kind of going out to you, Jim, is that, definitely take observation of those security practices, right? Like what areas have to be locked, how inmates get moved, what happens at the end of the night, the final lockdown, if that's the case, or when you leave your shift. But I guess the end is what Russ talked about, is really keep your eye on those security measures. And I want to touch on something real quick, Jim. Well, first, I'm going to ask something to the panel first, but let Jim, what's your thoughts on having rookies absorb the security practices, including everything from, the layout to how we transport inmates, all that stuff, if possible?
Well, first of all, learn the layout of the land immediately, because if you don't know the layout, then you can get lost and you can get screwed quick. If you don't understand, you don't make a left turn here, because that's going to get you into a bad situation, because there may be nobody there, maybe no cameras, and you may be walking into a whole slew of high profile or high security inmates and not realize it. That can be seriously bad in a real big hurry. So definitely know your layout of the situation. Whenever you walk by, look at the everywhere is supposed to have those fire safety exit maps. Look at them. They'll tell you where they're at. They'll let you also know. It gives you an idea of the layout, and if you can, memorize them. Well, or not memorize them, but at least have a really good video or vision in your head of where you're at all times. Because the other thing is, if you are having trouble, you get on the radio and say, "Hey, I need help." Nobody can help you if they don't know where you're at. It's like, you got to tell us where you're at. They may be running to D wing and you're over in A wing. You know, if you can't tell them what's going on or where you're at, you're going to have troubles that way. Another thing, talking about safety and locked doors and stuff, as you walk by doors, don't be afraid. Reach out, touch them, hit them, make sure they're locked. If they're not locked, find out why they're not locked. You know, because you might find out, might hit a cell door that opens up, it's not locked, and it's supposed to be. You might have just found an inmate that's been packing the lock mechanism with paper so it won't lock up because he's planning on getting out during night or something. So don't be afraid. Make sure you pop them doors, hit them doors, check things out, make sure they're locked. Look at locks. If you see an inmate, you know, maybe you're not looking, you just catch it at the corner of your eye, you see a lock, the keyhole turning, and nobody's in there. Nobody's with it, messing with it, or nobody's doing anything on that should be. I mean, it might mean an inmate's inside playing with it, just trying to determine just what's happening. And there's another thing you've got to watch, because maybe that inmate's trying to figure out a way to get out. So it's huge to learn the layouts and to watch all the safety stuff. And just, you know, from day one, it's really good to get into that habit. You know.
Right, Jim. You know what you're touching on? That's some really good points too. Is obviously learning the layout. Definitely, that should be one of the first things on the job that you want to get to know as best you can. Even if that means on your break you're going to take a walk around, if the facility allows you to do that. Sometimes you may not be allowed to do that due to safety and security reasons, or you may have to get permission from a supervisor. But you definitely need to understand the lay of the land. Also, understand the tools that you're given. You know, make sure you know how to use a 911 knife or whatever it is, or the designated keys. Sometimes you have emergencies, you got to open up that cell door real quick, or you got to get to something and you got to know which key it is. So some of them are number coded, you know, but either way, know which key is for what area. And really, again, you can even observe people. If you have an FTO, hopefully they're training you and they're saying, hey, by the way, all these 10 keys are for this and all these, whatever, however they're designated. Usually they're designated for you to recognize by a number. Some cases they may not be. It could be different at every facility. Hey, Joe, real quick, I want to ask a question to everybody, but I'll go around. I'll hit up Joe real quick first, and then I'm going to ask this question before we go into the next part. But, Joe, also, it's recommended that you get to connect with somebody who really knows how to write a report. You know, someone there it is. I wish you guys could see it right now because they're all like, okay, so I think we're gonna go. I think obviously everybody wants to chime in on this one. So I'll start with Joe, go with Russ, and then finish off with Jim on this one. But all right, let's talk about why you need to kind of connect with someone who knows how to write a report. Joe, what do you got first?
Yeah, you definitely want to find somebody who can write a good report, because you know, not only is communication important, but also written reports. Being able to communicate in a written report is also being able to get with somebody who knows how to do the who, what, when, where, and why, and how, and why it happened, and effectively communicate in writing versus somebody who can't is definitely it's definitely a big difference. You know, there's a lot of problems with that nowadays, and I hate to say it. You know, you have people who write reports like they talk. And it becomes a problem, especially if you ever have to land in federal court. There's an embarrassment factor of like tenfold on that. So definitely mold yourself around somebody who can write good reports, because not only will you need it for yourself, but later on as you achieve or inspire to go up the ranks, report writing 101 is a must. It is a must.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something. Me and Russ have covered report writing. Guys, just put report writing tier talk, and we've given out some really good hints. But Russ, what's your thoughts on following somebody that could write a good report?
It's an invaluable tool, and it's one area where you don't really want to slack. And it's one area where almost everybody tries to push it off and not learn it or get out of doing it. And let me tell you something, good report writing will take you to so many places. It will give you a better chance at promotion. It will give you a better chance at perhaps a different job outside of corrections. It'll do that for you. The next thing that it'll do is does anyone like seeing an inmate escape without paying any consequences? I don't. I hate that, right? And you know what? Especially the further I got into my career, it almost never happened to me because I knew how to make that sucker stick. The next thing that it does is it protects you, right? You're able to memorialize what happened at that moment in time when your memory is fresh, and you can explain the reasons that you took, the why of why you did what to that inmate. I had a situation where I had an inmate who took about 4 cans of pepper spray because he was all hopped up on spice. And anyway, ended up having to take him down on the tier. He wouldn't give me his hands. I was very scared about that, weapon possibly being in his waistband. And my God, with as much training as that California Department of Corrections gets, I threaded his arm with my baton and bent it back over so that I could keep him from going to his waistband. Because that's not taught, I had some people freak out on me. But they weren't able to say anything. They weren't able to do anything because it was all there in my report. I justified everything I did. I talked about the fact that this inmate, I had not searched him prior, that he had presented, considerable resistance, that I had to take him down to the ground, that he had just ended up assaulting and battering another inmate immediately prior to that. And so because no one had seen my slick maneuver on threading that elbow, I was golden, right? And I've written hundreds and hundreds of reports. And you know what? I have almost never had any problem whatsoever because I can equip myself in a manner that's both professional and enlightens people as to, what the policy is, what the procedure is, and everything else. So I never skip a beat. And so, I'm hoping very soon, as a matter of fact, to do a whole series on that. I keep saying I'm going to, but, life gets in the way a little bit.
I have an idea for a Tier Talk contest real quick, guys. I'm thinking what I will do one day is show a video, and then whoever emails me the best report wins. We'll figure out what they win. I'll talk to my sponsors, but you have to pretend you're the officer that's in the video, and whoever writes the best report will decide as a panel will win something, whatever it is. But it's just a good way to break down the different reports and see, the right and the wrong and, what you should and shouldn't do. And I don't know, that could be interesting. We'll talk about that later, but that's not a bad idea. Maybe we can even do that on Keepers of Chaos. Show a video and say, okay, guys, if you had to write a report, how would you write it? And then we can go ahead and see where people will make lefts and rights that shouldn't be made left or right. Okay. Go to Jim first real quick, or Russ? What do you got, Russ? You got something else you want to say real quick?
Yeah, just talking about report writing here, I would be remiss if I didn't pull out my favorite saying that I made up. You know what? Especially with regard to inmate discipline, if you want to hold a crucifixion, you got to bring the nails. Love saying that.
That's it's so. Hey, Jim, sorry, that's good though. Hey, Jim, what's your thoughts on connecting with someone that can write reports?
I think it's a huge thing. Like everybody says, you've got to write reports, and oh my God, you've got to learn how to do them. You want to be concise, you want to be to the point, but you want to make sure that you can make them stick, like Russ said. Now, one of the deals of looking for somebody that's good to write reports, don't listen to the people that complain about doing paperwork. Stay away from them, because I can almost guarantee their reports are going to be crap, or they're going to let a lot of stuff slide that should be reported just because they don't want to write them. They don't want to be messing with that paperwork. So don't pay attention to them. Go to the people that you see, they do a situation, they do an incident, they go to the desk, they sit down, they start writing. Go and talk to those people, because those are the ones. Now, granted, they may not be the best report writers, but those are the ones that you want to listen to, you want to watch, because that's how you want to be. You want to get those reports wrote, and you don't want to slack off in your paperwork, because like Russ said and Joe said, that doing your paperwork is a huge way to get in the world and move up through the ranks if you want to move up.
Right. And you know what, guys, just to close on the document part, I have 2 more areas I want to discuss, then we can start coming to a close, is when it comes to the reports, guys, if you have someone that's a very good writer, connect with them, and try to get an understanding of why the reports are written the way they're written. Again, there is a talent to this. And I'll tell you something, it's really not that hard to identify the talent, because I've noticed that when an incident happens, a lot of officers may go to this one individual, on the shift that seems to, again, they're not changing the integrity of what happened. They know how to word it better so it can translate to whoever's got to read it. I remember, the audience really isn't always going to be someone that's in the profession. You're writing it for the potential that the audience is going to be outside the profession. So some people are able to break down the complex situation as something very simple that actually favors our side and why things had to be done. Okay, so I want to ask something controversial first before we cover one more thing I think rookies should observe or absorb. And I'll start with Russ first, and we'll go to Jim and Joe. And this is kind of like a sidebar, and I think maybe we can create a whole dialogue on this. But just out of curiosity, when you have someone that's starting the profession, a lot of people say, well, when they're new, you want to start them in a minimum security, get them to learn their way before you put them in a max, because God forbid they make a mistake, the consequences are heavy. But on the adverse of that, some people will say, no, newer boots should start in max facilities, learn the higher level practices, and then they could always tone it down. But what if they make a mistake, right? So, Russ, you had to choose. You have a rookie right now, and you have an option to choose on their first day to place them in a maximum security area or a minimum security area. Which way are you going to go?
I think that I would split the baby there. But let me tell you something. Maximum security, it's a very rote kind of thing. You go in there, you do the same thing every day. You pull inmates out, handcuffed, putting them in showers, feeding them food, taking them to yard. And it builds some skill sets with regards to, handcuffing in a food port and, maybe talking to the inmate just a little bit. But overall, it doesn't really build your real communication skills. It doesn't really build your observation skills as well as it does where you're out there on the yard and you're seeing real body language between different groups, where you're seeing, how different groups act, where you're having to talk to multiple inmates to get information, to give information, and to do all those things. So I'm not a real big fan of starting someone, in the whole max thing, because I did it, and it's a dangerous, dirty place, and it builds some skill sets just a little bit, but beyond that, there's not a whole lot of meat on that bone once you get through to understanding, how that particular area operates. The places that you have, more activity and hundreds of inmates, and chow halls and yard time and all that kind of thing. I think that it's much more important to learn those things and learn skill sets that are developed there than just always worry about, because it's high security. That's the way I am about that.
No, can I be honest with you? I went into this question with a very limited perspective. Actually, I was kind of leaning towards, I'll give an answer too. I was leaning towards the max first because I want to give them a foundation of safety and security before we start blending them into the interactions. Because believe it or not, when I was new, I didn't interact a lot with the inmates at first. I wanted to get an understanding of the layout, the safety and security side of things, and then eventually the interactions would occur, but I still wanted to have that foundation. But I do see the way you explained it, the priority of, there's other stuff there. Yeah, we'll get the foundation, but let's not minimize the importance of having those interactions. And also through those activities, you also learn the regular running of the prison, which is really, really geared towards rehabilitation and reentry. So I think there's values on both perspectives. And again, not to minimize, I would choose max only because I would give them a foundation of safety and security, set it at a high. And I think that kind of sets a bit of a shield. And if they were to go to minimum, here's the funny thing. I don't care if I have a max officer, working in minimum security, what I mean by that is their mind still set up in max. I could deal with that a little bit as opposed to having an officer that has that minimum mindset, bringing that into a max environment. But with that said, on the two extremes, I like what Russ did. He brought the middle road in because there's other things to be aware of, like the interactions and stuff. But just answering on the extremes, I would prefer max, and they could work it down. But I could definitely see either way, and I appreciate that middle road, as I wasn't even thinking of that, Russ. So thank you for mentioning that. What's your thoughts on that, Jim? Do you start off in max? Do you start off in minimum, or are we crossing the middle road?
The interesting thing is in jails, you actually have all three. Yeah, well, okay, you're only talking two, minimum and maximum. There's actually medium security, at least in our environment, or in the state that I'm in. We have three levels, and because minimum security is actually like a work release. It's very liberal, very open. And most of our facilities are state facilities are medium maximum. But a jail is all three, minimum, medium, maximum. And I think, in all honesty, if you can get a person into that kind of a facility where they can touch on all three, they can see the differences in the three levels, and they can see how the three levels are different, but how they have to interact and how they have to interchange between the three, and how a CO has to change his levels of interactions and his levels of duties between the three, I think is a better move.
Well, you see, the only thing I was thinking of is that I compared it to two extremes, right? And what I meant by that is, the reason why I always say, and again, I'm defending my position, but if I'm wrong, it is what it is that before they can blend, they have to have an understanding of a practice. And I'll give you an example. Like some people that want to teach their child two languages at home. It's like, yeah, but they still have to get a grasp of one of the languages before you can introduce them into another language. Well, same thing here. If I feel I have an officer, I would like to make sure they're on point with safety and security first by, having them work in the heavier units. But again, they're monitored by support staff, so they should be very limited in the mistakes that they can make because they're being observed. But with that said, they develop consistent practices that I feel will have use as they. What do you got, Jim? I see you got a comment.
Okay, but you're talking about safety and security, right? And you're equating that with maximum. Here's the funny thing: there's more push for safety and security in a minimum facility, at least in our state, because minimum security, like I said, is like work release. They're in there for the night. They come out during the day. They go to their jobs. And it's sad to say this, but we have a lot of inmates that walk away from minimum security. They don't come back from their jobs. They cut off their monitors. So, equating safety and security strictly with max is not really right. Because in maximum, they're not leaving the building unless there's some serious, somebody's coming in with a helicopter or some shit. I mean, some really major stuff going on. They're not leaving that building. Your security there is, like Russ was talking about, you have to do your handcuffs through the food ports. You have to do your full restraints on full movements and everything. You have to be locked down to full deal. They're out for 1 hour for rec. You're very much on that. So, but you're very rote on your maximum facilities and on your securities and on stuff and on your safeties. In a minimum environment, that's just totally gone. You have to have all the security, but you don't have as much control of the inmates. But your security is a lot higher because you have a huge risk of escapes. You have a huge risk of contraband. So you're going to learn a lot more, in my opinion, a lot more about safety and security in a minimum environment, because you're going to do pat downs constantly, and you're going to find contraband all the time. You're going to run into total lockdowns to go find an inmate that decided he didn't want to come home from church or something like that. You're going to learn what it means to contact state patrol to tell and local authorities to tell them, hey, we've got an inmate that's run, one that's absconded. So I think equating safety and security only with maximum is kind of one-sided and wrong.
Right. Well, the only thing is we're not just equating it to the perimeter. We're equating it to the mindset of the inmate. So what we have here is that when you're in max, the mindset of the inmate is a lot different than the mindset of an inmate who's in full min. Most inmates that do run out of full min leave because of impulse. They'll claim some BS and they'll take off because, oh, my family member or something, they'll claim something, and most likely they'll find themselves on their way back. Having said that, maximum security inmates, their mindset's different. They're preparing for the stay, where the mindset of a full min inmate hopefully should be preparing for their release and their reentry. So part of my concerns when it comes to safety and security is the interactions that the officer has with the inmates. The inmate and officer in a maximum security environment, their interaction with the officer is going to be a lot different than the interaction with an officer in a full min environment. So when you mention liberal, I understand that, but we're not just talking about the parameters. We're not just talking about the safety and security of it. We're talking about also the biggest part is human behavior. We're talking about the interactions that, are going to happen between the officer and the inmate. So what I would like to do is put the officer next to the inmates that are going to challenge them a little bit more, that are going to expose them to a little more, because their mindset is more focused on how do I make my time easier here? That's where the challenge is. Now that if you start off with that officer in full min, a place where it's more liberal, their interactions with the inmates aren't going to be as on point as it would be with the maximum security inmate, because I've seen it. I've seen officers with their guard down when they're dealing with full min inmates. But that same officer, when they get moved to a max facility, they're going to be a little bit more on point. So I agree with you on the security, but what I was talking about more is the interaction with the inmate population. Two different mindsets. One mindset is, how do I get over this officer because I got to do the rest of my time, my 20 years, whatever it is, or if I'm in lockup, how do I make this officer make my time a little bit more easier in my lockup? Or if I get them in full min, 9 times out of 10, for the most part, these inmates, I'm going home. My focus is I'm going home. And don't get me wrong, if they come across a weak officer, they could pounce. They could. But for the most part, the mindset of a full min inmate is a lot different than a mindset of a maximum security inmate. And I'd rather have my staff kind of lean towards treating an inmate like they're max first. And we could always tell them to tone it down, but they need to have that no. That's where the no comes from. We tell everybody no unless we can make it a yes. But I definitely agree with what you said, which is also very enlightening with the environment. Yes, full min has a lot of major security concerns all the time because it's more out in the open. You're right. And they have inmates that go into the environments that got to get checked more often and stripped. You're also dealing with inmates in bulk. But the key for that part was just more their mindset. The mindset of a full min inmate should be a lot different than the mindset of an inmate that's in maximum security lock, if you will. So I guess that was still a healthy dialogue. Okay, you don't hate me, do you? Hey, Joe, what's your thoughts, Joe? Maximum, I'm alone here, Joe.
No, you're not alone, brother. I'm going to have to, I'm not going to split the baby and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Max all the way. I think your ass should be on a max facility just because of the fact, and again, because depending on your staffing levels and what your greatest needs are, that's not always going to be achievable. You may not be able to put that boss in a max. They may be short on the minimum custody side, wherever your staffing needs. I was fortunate enough to start off in the max facility with the worst of the worst. Open cell block bars where these segregation offenders could reach out and touch you. They could spear you. They could chunk on you. I've been knocked out with a soup can on a run. Being in a max custody area gives you better situational awareness in my book. And it kind of, to me, the max versus minimum is kind of like going from the no to the yes and the yes to the no. It's easier to go from the max to the minimum than it is to take somebody who's worked a minimum facility for 15 years and then suddenly you put them in a max facility and the oh shit factor kicks in. Nobody told me I was going to get hit in the head or somebody was going to chunk feces on me. Somebody was going to jack my handcuffs when I take them out for showers. Nobody told me that, to me, being in the max facility gives you better situational awareness because you're always playing the what if game when you're walking up on a cell. It doesn't matter if you're going to get this guy for a shower, if you're taking him out for rec, you're always playing that what if game because okay, I'm dealing with this butthole. He's going to jack my cuffs or he's going to jack my food slot, and then once you go from that, you take that mentally from playing a what if game for 12 hours a shift and being firm, fair, and consistent in your application of duties. And then you go to a minimum facility, you're still in that mindset, but it's easier to tone down than it is to raise it back up.
Yeah, I do agree, but I see. All right, here it goes. This wasn't supposed to happen, but go ahead. We got it. What do you got, Russ? I got with me and Joe.
Well, I don't know. Maybe other places do it differently than California, but just to give you an example, like my first few weeks. Okay, so my first day was on death row, and I spent a few days there. And then out to minimum where we had no security perimeter. Spent a few days out there. Came back, did reception center receiving and release for a few days. Then reception center. Then level 4 general population. Then back over to the AC and stuff. Nobody here is working, I would say, unless they're not working any overtime, which is almost impossible, they're not working one spot. They're working a minimum, and then they're shuffling over and they're working in ADSEG, and then they're going over and they're working in a, level 3 general pop or a level 4 general pop. It's not, there's nobody working strictly minimum, strictly maximum. Because you have guys up in maximum, right? And okay, they got a little bit of overtime and they're working over in the minimum unit tonight, or they're doing a shift swap with a buddy. So I don't know, maybe different states work different, but I'm telling you, in California, it was all over the map.
Well, no, listen, some states are multifaceted and multi-levels, but some states do have that facilities that are strictly max. That's how they operate, we do it also in Jersey. So like sometimes what happens here is when you get the new boots, you look at the facilities and see which staff kind of have been waiting for that transfer to come in, especially if let's say they're from max facilities, and you put the new boots over and then you move the older staff to, wherever, if they have those transfers, and you kind of complement the numbers. But with that said, if you have a chance to, let's say, you have a facility that's totally max, and you have a facility that's, a farm, because you have those two out there, that's that facility. I think if I have a rookie coming out of the academy, if they have an academy, and I'm sending them right to a farm because there's an opening there, I don't think it's going to give them the base to survive in this field. I think the base has to be safety and security, and that will be the foundation that navigates the interactions, But if you want to have the interactions before that foundation, then you're setting the person up, in my opinion. So again, if I had the choice, give them the foundation of safety and security, and that will define how their interactions play out and who they are in those areas. Even in the minimum security, you can always get them to tone down, but they have a good base to start from, the no to the yes. But some places do have those choices. And again, if and I guess we could say it this way, if I get to choose from like a maximum security facility for a rookie, or a work release program that's strictly a farm, I don't think it would be in my best interest to give a new boot out of the academy a farm setting, because there's going to be certain behaviors they learn there that they may not realize are complacent. Because let's be honest with you, when you work in a minimum security, you're going to pick up on complacent habits. It just is what it is. As much as you want to be on point, it may not demand that every day, because the inmates are more liberal, like Jim said. So it's not going to demand certain measures. So you start to forget those measures exist. Next thing you know, you're putting your feet up. Well, now go ahead and take that same mentality over to a maximum security facility. You got a problem. So I think you need to establish that safety and security background first, get that good, and that will navigate the interactions, and that will actually give it a better foundation. And again, that's, I said, based on the extremes, because it's not so much the environment, it's the interactions with the inmates that build on our reactions to the environment. The environment's the environment. It's the inmates that try to maneuver. So if you don't have that safe and secure foundation in the back of your mind, the inmates will maneuver, and you're not going to get that from full men. You're going to get that from dealing with the inmates that are more concerned about their time behind the wall than they are about their time being released. So different mindset, but either way, both points are valid. Definitely a worthy discussion later on. I even put a poll up, so by the end of the show, we'll see where everybody goes with that. But I think it can go. I respect all perspectives. All right, so
is the poll only going to involve the extremes?
Yeah, but that was the question, though. The question was, do you think rookies should start in max facilities or low level? Yeah, the reason why it's controversial is because it's the extremes. Don't get me wrong. I mean, yeah, you do have middle ground. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, just want to get a base. I made it controversial by making it the extremes. Where would you choose? And the reason why I made it the extremes is I wanted people to know that safety and security mindset comes first before everything else. So I made it an extreme to advertise safety and security, which as opposed to a more liberal environment. So if I didn't make it the extreme, it wouldn't promote what I was looking for, with safety and security being the foundation to motivate or validate our interactions with the population. Again, it's the interaction with the population, because I agree with Jim. There are major security concerns, the environment. I understand that in a full min, but I was talking about the interactions where the mindset of the inmates are different. And as I said, I mean, yes, you do have escapes and whatnot, but there are a lot. I'll put it this way, and I know this for a fact. This may sound crazy, guys, but I know this for a fact, but don't ever do this. If you decide to go to full min and just open up the doors, inmates will tell you, hey, Gangi, the door's open. Hey, Gangi, your keys are over here. Hey, Gangi's this, because they don't want to get in trouble. They're for parole. They're getting ready to leave. You do that in max, they ain't going to tell you the door's open. They ain't going to tell you drop your key. Not that I'm dependent on them doing that. Don't get me wrong. Just the mindset is, the inmate's like, I'm not going to touch that key. I'm leaving in a week. I ain't touching that. But I'll guarantee you, make that same mistake in a maximum security facility, that inmate's going to touch that key, open that door, and he's going to put a challenge to you. But again, it goes either way. I don't want to, but definitely we're going to have this discussion again, because I think there's going to be, let's see what people say. But it's not about right or wrong here, guys, by the way, because they're only, even ours, me and Joe's an opinion, Russ and Jim's an opinion. There's no right or wrong here. It's just what you guys believe. One last part, and then I think we can come to a close, and I'm going to go backwards this time. I'm going to start with Joe, then Jim, and then Russ. But I want to discuss, we talked about interactions. We talked about establishing control, right? We talked about, the dialogue, inmate management. I definitely want to observe how people manage inmates and kind of model. But I also want to observe how we react, or how senior staff react when they're being challenged by an inmate. Are they professional? Are they unprofessional? So I'm going to go with you first, Joe. I mean, so if you're a rookie and you're obviously observing. If you're observing, an inmate challenge an officer, what would you expect as a lieutenant for that senior staff member to do, or how they should respond back?
Well, the first thing I look for, in the way an officer responds, is the way they carry themselves verbally, what we call the verbal judo. Do they know how to de-escalate a situation? Do they know how to prevent a situation? Or are they going to be the ones that go from 0 to 60 and within 8 seconds you're in the midst of a use of force? I always try to tell them to be level-headed in any situation. All it takes is an ounce of panic to create a riot, and it's always easier. Most times, I say it's easier to de-escalate a situation verbally if you maintain your composure. The way you carry yourself, speaks a lot of volume amongst the offender population. When you're there, you got your word and you got respect, and without either one of them, your job is going to be very, very tough. So, I like to see people who are level-headed going into situations, using their verbal skills as much as possible. Especially, those who don't overamp a situation, the fire starter. That's kind of what I look for in a situation.
Yeah, I like how you use that keyword fire starter. I used to, guys, I used to have officers when I would work a unit, they would maybe do the break, they would come in, they would rouse things up, and then they would leave. And now you're stuck with the mess. And eventually I would call the supervisor. I'd be like, hey, listen, can I not have this person break me anymore? Or if they do, you know what, here's the keys, they could run the unit, because I had a way of things. They would come in and they would kind of just, put their little flames in, but I'm the one that has to put them out. And that becomes exhausting. So yeah, and I definitely agree with that level of professionalism, but also, believe it or not, there is still that level of respect that's given on both sides. And if you're going to sit here, stir up shit in my unit, and again, guys, if you're new, watch the officers that do that, because at the end of the day, when they're making that mess, watch how the other officers react to that. Some are going to speak up, and hopefully the supervisor should actually be on it, but don't be that officer. Just do what you got to do, and then, get out of that unit, whatever it is, if that's what your specific function is. But Jim, what's your thought on, any tips when it comes to watching someone being challenged by an inmate? What are we looking for?
I agree a lot with Joe. What Joe said. You all watch the guys that are calm, cool, collected, and depending on, as far as a new boot, you really can't do this, but moving up as a supervisor, talking about this on a jail setting, I've had officers bring in a fresh arrest, and I've had guys in inmate or detainees in booking just bouncing off the walls, going off, and I've literally told the officers, get the hell out of my booking, because they're being there, or they're saying little words and stuff. I've told officers, get the hell out of my booking, leave, be gone. And as soon as they leave, I can generally get that inmate or that detainee to calm back down, get things settled, because, well, first of all, they're pissed off because the dude just arrested them. The officer just arrested him, so they're pissed. They're mad at him for that. So as long as I can control him and get him out of there, they start coming down. They start realizing, okay, this is not the guy that arrested me, but and I'm going to deal with him. So that works that way. So as a supervisor, if you see another staff that has that effect on inmates or on certain inmates, don't be afraid to tell them to step off. You step away, because you're going to make the situation even worse. Step off. Let me talk to this. Step aside. Let me talk to this person. But don't be an ass about it and totally ruin that officer's credibility, that CO's credibility.
That's spot on. I think Russ, I think you would agree, right? I think we're kind of coming to where it's like, you get challenged by the inmate, don't take it personal, right? I mean, that's the key, right? Like, this is not in a business where you're going to take things personal. You're going to have that thick skin. You're going to have to come in knowing that I'm going to take some shots here, but at the end of the day, I'm still going to maintain control, and I'm still not going to take it personal, because what happens at work, I'm going to leave at work, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the way I like to look at it and the way I like to discuss it with with officers with less experience, whether they're new boots or not, is you have to decide you have to look at what the level of that challenge is, right? And the higher the level of challenge, the less amount of time you want to spend on dealing with it. Okay. If a guy is in there and he's making threats and being boisterous, and you give it your best initial shot to try and throw some water on that and tamp it down a little bit, you don't want to let that just continue on, because then it spreads to other people, it spreads to other cells, and your chances of success go down, 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 because then you've gone from trying to de-escalate the situation to try and negotiate the situation. You try and negotiate the situation, and every time just about, it's going to be worse. Now, as you come down that chain a little bit, where the challenge is perhaps, less immediate, then you can afford to spend a little bit more time on it. You can afford to try and use a better set of de-escalation skills. But there's some point where you still have to cut it short, and you don't want to end up going across that boundary, wherever it is, where it goes from, the de-escalation part to negotiating. Because once you get into the negotiating, you've lost control of the situation. And that's when it actually can become really, really very dangerous, in my opinion. So I like to have people that go in there that they've learned the verbal skills, and they try and throw that immediate water on it. It's not working. Okay, come on, guy, we got to do something else. And then move to whatever else I have to move to.
I love how and we've covered this before, Russ, and I love how you bring it up again. De-escalation, and we talked about this, versus negotiation. And negotiation, it's kind of like we're bartering for control here. We can never allow that to happen. And I love when you bring that up. And what's funny, guys? I used to remember writing up inmates and then chasing after them to see if the charge stuck. I wasn't chasing after them for the right reasons. Technically, if I'm chasing after a charge, I should, let's say for some reason the inmate beats the charge, it's because I'm chasing after, because I want to learn how I can make my charges better, not because it's personal between me and that inmate. And the inmate starts to see that you're chasing charges because it is personal, they're going to come up to you every time like it's a win-loss. I beat it. And then you start getting frustrated because you're seeing the charges as a win-loss. It's not. If you think about it, even if an inmate beats the charge, all right, you still keep on doing it. Never get disenfranchised, because that's what they want. And sometimes what happens here is that inmates beat the charge because we don't do enough to support it. We'll be quick to blame admin and everybody else, but at the end of the day is, maybe the charge is just badly written. We don't know. So how about we follow up on it, but never take it as a win-loss, because the inmates will know if you take it as a win-loss, it's personal, and they're going to go ahead and push your buttons. And I know you got something with that, Russ?
Yeah, I was just going to say, really, if you're going to be following up on disciplinaries and stuff like that, let the person that you are, up against with regards to that competition be yourself, not that inmate, right? If you wrote that charge to the best of your ability, if you investigated that charge to the best of your ability, if you used your imagination to try and find every possible piece of evidence, everything that was possibly probative, and you can, put it all into that report writing and yield a good product, then there's no shame in that. But when you approach it and you just half-ass that report, and you don't bother to really nail down what all the little parts of that investigation should be, and you lose it, you shouldn't be blaming that inmate for pushing your button. You should be blaming yourself for not doing a good job.
Yeah, that's 100% spot on. Now, before we come to our closing thoughts, I did post a question up, and I did get one response so far. Russ is pissed. Don't get mad. Come on, guys. I never win, Russ. So this is what Rick Tooper says, and then we'll leave it be. Rick, I just want to read off this wonderful comment that you put down. Lot to learn here. Rick Tooper says, after the academy in New York, now he's dating himself here, they put you in the closest max to your home for 4 weeks, then they ship you as far away as they can. I ended up at Sing Sing. I'm not sure if they're still doing this or not. It was back in '88, but max first. So, but again, maybe I asked the question wrong. but I still feel that there's two valid points here that I'm just curious that it was debatable. Because I did. If I didn't think it was debatable, guys, I wouldn't put up a poll. Because I still think that what we said, anything on left or right, that's why I wanted to avoid the middle. I wanted the extremes. But again, both valid points. I'm just messing with you guys. Obviously, plus, I'll be honest with you, Russ telling me something through Zoom is a lot different than Russ telling me something in person. If Russ tells me something in person, I'm just going to agree with it. I don't have a fucking choice. Same thing as you, Jim. I'm only 5'5". Like literally, I'm the same size sitting down as I am standing up. So I mean, there's no threat there. So I'll talk shit on Zoom all day, Russ. I'll talk shit all day. Hey, Gange, I'll see you in Vegas. Yeah, all right, Russ. Different dialogue then. Hey guys, so just go around. What do you want to say in closing? So Joe, you have anything you want to say in closing?
The biggest thing you made that comment about talking shit, and here I was asking Russ when we were on break. He walked in the room and I asked him, "Holy shit, is the ceiling that low, or are you just that tall?"
It's big,
It's okay. So with that, in closing, for your newly driven up officers, as we call them, drive ups. Model yourself after a professional officer. Always play the what if game. Learn to be a valuable report writer, because that will save you every time. We talked about the medium and maximum. Each one has its own attributes that you can bring to the other. The security mindset and situational awareness from maximum facility to being a verbal communicator on the minimum side, because the offenders are moving around more. You got to verbally communicate. You got to make yourself known. You got to be able to give orders. So and it's true. They both have great aspects. That was, and then that's a great mind provoker as to which one somebody should go to. Like in my state, we have both a high security and your general pop in the same farm, and you're either high security or your general population. You're not both. So, we have the handful of the ones that have been over there for years that come to minimum security and go, I don't think I can function here. It's not that structured. And then you get the ones that go from minimum to maximum and go, what the hell did I just sign up for? So they both have probative values. But for the new COs, take it in, be situationally aware, always play that what if game, write good reports, model yourself after professional people. And, I guarantee that, if you stick with it long enough, you will never forget the good people that taught you the right things.
Yeah, in all fairness, we are starting getting some comments. So Clayton Barrow says, and this goes right into what Russ and Jim said. And by the way you just said it is why it makes it a debate, why our answers aren't specifically 100% right. And again, neither on their end either. That's why it's a good discussion. Is in my county jail, they get trained in every housing unit because they look for that blend. And I think the key is the safety and security and the interactions. So I thought that was one. And then someone said, it's a difficult question. I started my career in a high-level area, and when I would run low-level areas, I have to remind myself the only difference between the two is about 2 seconds. I don't know what that means. Does anybody know what that means? All right, we're frozen. So, all right. So I did my generalized comment and said, well said. So I'm going to go ahead and change that and say, I don't know exactly what that means. Okay. Hey, Jim, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, for the new guys coming in, don't be afraid to ask questions, but learn when to ask them. Don't ask if an inmate comes up to you and says and asks you something right away and you don't know, don't turn to your field training officer right there and tell him, okay, and ask him, okay, so what do I do here? Not right in front of the inmate. Tell him, I don't know. Let me find out and I'll let you know. Or let your FTO step in. If he feels the need to, he'll step in and say it. Wait till the inmate leaves, then ask your question. Okay, why did we do this? Why did we say this? Why did this go this way? Why do we do these things? Find the right time to ask your questions, and don't be afraid to ask questions. If you're going to shut up and not say a thing, not ask questions, just walk around and think you're going to learn it all and just absorb it, you're not. And in all reality, if that's the way an inmate's, or not an inmate, a new boot's going to be, they really kind of worry me. If they're not going to ask questions, they're not going to learn.
Yeah, before we go to Russ, I want to also mention something. You just remind me of something. Get a hold of books, like 48 Laws of Power, books on like Art of the Con. I do have a book coming out. Russ will hopefully have his book coming out on complacency soon. My book will be on manipulation. You know, get a hold of these books, do some reading. If you see inmates are reading these books in stockpiles, make an effort to read it. It's what made me read all Robert Greene's books. I read all his books on human behavior. The big one was 48 Laws of Power. The inmates were reading that like crazy. And I said, you know what? It's a popular book. Let me go ahead and take a look, see what that book's about. And I'm glad I read it because I was able to recognize things from the book that they were could have been utilizing on me. So again, you know, what you learn may not just also be on the job. It could be just absorbing stuff that can help you be better at what you do when it comes to managing people. So take advantage of anything you can that comes with managing people. My degrees are in psychology and social psych. So I'm very attuned into not just how we feel about ourselves, the insight, but also situational awareness, how the environment can push and pull on us into doing things that we wouldn't normally do. Invisible motivators, if you will. Hey, Russ, what's your closing thoughts? I know you have a lot to say for our rookies.
I just got a couple of them here. First of all, just with regard to 48 Laws of Power, in California at least, that book is forbidden within the correctional system. So that ought to tell you, you know, just how big of a security threat that we take that sort of thing. And then you know, for all of you new guys that are coming in, whether you're starting, you know, at the low end and minimum, or you're starting in the max end, the only thing that really matters is that you're getting in there and you have your nose to the grindstone and you're trying to make it more safe and more secure. And, you know, you're willing to put in the work, because so many times I see guys, they come in and whatever they've got, they set that lever on cruise control, and that's all they ever do in their whole career is they just try and avoid the conflict. You need to be in there and mixing it up and trying to find the contraband, stop the riots, you know, prevent the escapes, and do all of those other things that a fully responsible professional correctional officer would do, no matter which end of the spectrum that you're working on, whether that's your chosen part of the career or whether you're taking, you know, that overtime home at the end of the month.
Yeah, Russ, as always, spot on. And I just want to do something real quick for our rookies. I have 18 years in, right? Russ, what did you have then before you retired? How much time?
The first time I had 25, and then I had 27, and then I had like 29. So and now I'm doing some other stuff that I kind of still count as kind of being a little bit corrections. It's not custody, but it's you know, rehabilitation. So, you know, I'm extending outward and I'm learning more every day.
Yeah, welcome to the club. I'm in charge of, I oversee the programming at my facility. It's a, you know what? It's a different type of effort, but definitely they're very dedicated in what they do. And I admire the work ethic. You know what I mean? I mean, everybody has their jobs to do. So, you know, I don't promote us versus them. I admire the work ethic and the dedication, and it gives me a chance through the people to really get a better understanding of what they do. And I have a lot of respect for that side. So, and it's great to see you cross over, because I've done that. And, you know, maybe one day we'll be on a discussion for reentry. You never know. Hey, Joe, how much time did you have, man? You have 22?
As I actually have 29 years, 8 months active right now. I have 5.5 months left to go before I retire, and that'll put me a little over 30 years, with 20 of them as a lieutenant. Okay, and Jim, what do you got?
I had 16, keeping going.
All right, so just I want to tell people something, just so the rookies can understand this, right? I have California, New Jersey, Nebraska, and Texas. Everybody's correct? Good. And 92 years experience between us four. Think about that, guys. 4 different states, 92 years of experience on the front line working in corrections. This is advice that you don't throw out. That's value that just no price on that. For my final thoughts, I'm going to kind of piggyback on what Jim was saying and kind of also with Russ and Joe. Don't be afraid to ask questions, but also don't be afraid to ask why. The why is what's going to help you remember things. The why is the reasons for it. You know, sometimes we have trouble remembering bullets, but if someone explains to me and they sit down, they explain the why sometimes has so much value that you'll never forget it. So again, understand the specifics, but ask why. Why will hold a lot of weight. And, you got to get a good understanding because you're creating that foundation at the beginning. So whys will matter because they'll set you up with the practices that you need to follow later on. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell's going to notify you every time I post up a video. As always, guys, from 4 states with 92 years of experience, stay safe.